Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark,
My name is Mark.
and this is the M&M Show, episode 6, prepping for week 7. How are you today, Mark?
Pretty good, pretty good. Can't believe it's the halfway mark of fantasy football already.
And therefore, we have a special for you guys. Um, yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. Essentially, Mark and I, we're going to discuss two of our teams. And one of the teams, two teams that we'll be discussing are in the same league amongst ourselves, and the other two are from separate leagues. And we'll pretty much just give you our reviews, midseason reviews, how we're feeling about certain players, and also just discuss some of the bigger topics that are taking shape across the league.
Yeah, a little bit more selfish of an episode. We're covering our teams, our leagues, but you also get some of those highlights, surprise players, players that have disappointed, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah,
Um,
a lot of good stuff on the
who,
way.
do you want to kick off with your personal league, your team that's been suffering a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So I have a Yahoo League with some old friends of mine. We've been running this league for maybe 6+ years, and then in totality, we go back to 2013, more or less. Um, so yeah, always have a lot of fun with this league. I always find a way to quote unquote dominate if I can. I think I've been pretty good the last few years, but I've never won the championship. So um, yeah, I know my friends will give me some crap for this later today, for boasting about myself and my fantasy abilities. Um, but let's dive into it. I'll go through my roster real quick. So starting lineup, I have Jaden Daniels, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Devon Achane, James Cook, Brock Bowers. Defenses and kickers, we don't need to go into that. Flex for my flex, I have Jordan Mason at the moment, Chase Brown, Xavier Worthy, and some new additions to my team from the waiver wire include Troy Franklin from the Denver Broncos, Keon Coleman, who was somehow miraculously on waivers, and I love that. Bo Nix, just in case Daniels doesn't play this week. Bo Nix has a good matchup against the Carolina Panthers. Isaiah Grando is my Jordan Mason insurance. So if anything happens to Mason, like right now, he has a little AC joint injury taking place that might have hindered him a little bit last week. Well, I got Grando in case anything happens. And we have 2 IR spots in my league. So for one of them, I have Jonathan Brooks. This is definitely more of a late season play. I would expect week 10 and after, maybe Brooks would be could be a good running back option, just depending on what Carolina decide to do with his situation. And for my last IR spot, I actually picked up Tua Tagovailoa, and he's coming back this week. So again, another option I could probably throw in case Daniels doesn't play. Regardless, Daniels has a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears, who seem to be a stingy defense. So that's already concerning to me.
I love how you have 3 quarterbacks, 2 receivers on the same team, and then I know you love your handcuffs. So definitely a different strategy than what I've adopted in my leagues. But yeah, any highlights from draft day or guys you're really happy with right now?
Yeah, certainly. I'll say, so far, of course, Jaden Daniels has been a highlight. I do have a funny story about that. As the draft was taking place, I think it was the 7th or 8th round. Um, I actually ran out of time, and I had Jaden Daniels queued up already. So I auto drafted Jaden Daniels, which ended up working out great for me. But definitely, if I had more time, I probably wouldn't have taken Jaden Daniels. I probably would have looked to finesse that a little better. But still, no complaints with 7th round pick.
I don't think either of us or really anybody expected Jaden Daniels to be as polished as he has been. Like everyone was talking about his mobility and comparing him to Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in terms of rushing potential. But like I didn't expect him to be as accurate as he has been or as, composed in the pocket.
Super composed. His awareness is just immaculate for, a rookie. I mean, he looks like a complete veteran out there for most of the times that I've seen him. Another bright spot would be Brock Bowers. Again, just a really late round pick, 11th round. I think he was the only tight end I selected in this draft. So that worked pretty well for me, except for the fact that I don't think my team ended up being as deep as I would, even though I have these players who are great value players. We've hit a lot of speed bumps at the moment. So I have a 4-3 record. I was 4-2 last week, had an opportunity to make it 5-2. And so I took a loss. So we're down to 4-3. And another thing with this league is that the parity is just on another level this year. Really, there are 3 teams that are out of contention, with the best team of those being a 1-5 team or 2-5 team.
Yeah, 2-5 or 1-6, 7 games.
And then every team after that, every team after those 3 is essentially 4-3 and over, with 1-6-1 team. So it's it's going to be a real tight race to the playoffs. Luckily, we have 6 spots, but it's going to be really intriguing to see how this last half of the season plays out.
Yeah, your team's looking stacked right now. I know you mentioned depth being an issue, and like that's part of fantasy football, right? Is waiver wire pickups. People have injuries, bye weeks, trying to finagle those trades. You and I are both guys who like to wheel and deal our players, and we can get into that in a minute. But anybody you kind of missed on, or you were high on coming into the season and disappointed?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I would say even with Tua out, I would have thought Devon Achane would have probably helped me a little more despite Tua's absence. But it goes to show that Achane just isn't quite the same player without Tua. No one in Miami really is. And it's probably just their fault for not having a reliable backup quarterback to support Tua and the rest of this team. So Devon Achane for now. As of late, I traded for Jordan Mason, and with the past 2 weeks, and I just haven't seen those dividends pay off yet, even though I would still make that trade 10 out of 10 times. But let's hear a little bit about your team, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, one last point on Achane. I know going into the draft in our work league that we're a part of, I wasn't high on him. You heard my thoughts about him, and like he's obviously of a different caliber than Chris Johnson with the Titans a while back. But you always have these running backs that kind of explode on the scene, and it's like, can you repeat the next year? And Achane's talented. It's year 2 for him. But yeah, that was a guy I was unsure about. I've got a friend league with some guys from college in Florida. It's a 10 team instead of 12, and it's half PPR instead of PPR. We're all still salty about Mike Thomas a couple years ago with the Saints when he just had all those catches on 8-yard slants. I'm 5-2 in that league right now in first place, and I'm kind of clobbering the competition. I've scored 100 more points than the second highest scorer. Gotten a little bit lucky with how many points people have been putting up against me. But a lot of that just has to do with my draft strategy, and I lucked out on it. I went heavy on running backs. So I've got Jaden Daniels as well. Didn't auto-draft him, but he was a flyer late in the draft. He's QB3 on the year. I drafted Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry on the turn. So I've got 2 of the top 3 running backs on my lineup. Swung a trade, got A.J. Brown, and Devon Achane. I've got DJ Moore, just picked up David Njoku after trading away George Kittle. Have J.K. Dobbins in there as well, and then whatever defense I can pick up off the waiver wires. And then on my bench, I've got Mike Evans, which we can get into it later. He just got injured. He'll be out a couple weeks, but really high-quality receiver. Zay Flowers, kind of hit or miss with the Ravens. Anthony Richardson, I've got him riding on the bench with Jaden Daniels, but I might plug and play him this week. Still high on him, but he's been disappointing. And then I've got Xavier Worthy, kind of same thing, boom or bust, and he's been bust the past few weeks. And just picked up Jalen McMillan today. I had Rashid Shaheed, really high on him in our Florida league. We counted kickoff and punt return yards. So when he had that punt return for a touchdown, that scored a lot of points for me. But, with him having a season-ending injury, he's off the team. It's not a dynasty situation. So, yeah, that's my personal league.
Yeah, definitely. Just having Saquon and Henry together, it's an incredible stack to have this year. I do have another league mate who has the same exact stack too, with Saquon and Henry, and he's crushing it. His team is 6-1. So, although he was hit with a big injury bug with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, PK Metcalf, and there was probably a fourth receiver that got hurt on his team. So just a complete injury bug to his receiving core. But still, I think just having Saquon and Henry should be enough to be able to weather some of those losses.
Yeah, and injuries are always a fluke in real life and in fantasy sports. And with Saquon and Derrick Henry, I think there were questions about both of them with their new teams. Saquon has injury history himself, but he was going to a much better situation than when he was with the Giants. And Derrick Henry, he's old for a running back, but he's built different, literally. You saw him run for 81 yards last week, just cut through and take off down the sideline. So I think both of them being in better situations with better offenses, better quarterbacks has helped enormously.
Yeah, if I had a comparison for Derrick Henry, he really is the reincarnation of Adrian Peterson in some ways. Just complete stud running backs who are defying the running back cliff odds and just completely helping their teams be successful. So love to see it. How are you feeling about so you said Xavier Worthy has been a bust for you so far. And I share a similar sentiment, although, based off his production, it hasn't quite all been that busty. It's just not the production we want to see from a first-round receiver like Xavier Worthy in a Kansas City offense.
Yeah, I had questions about Kansas City because Patrick Mahomes loves passing the ball around. We'd expect Travis Kelce to get more targets than he did to start the season. That's kind of picking up. But with Rashee Rice out, with Juju out, I expected Xavier Worthy to step up, and it hasn't translated so far. He's still involved. Neither of us expected him to have a performance like he did in week 1 with a rushing touchdown and receiving touchdown on 3 touches every week. But I think we both expected more from him. But I have to give you a shout out on here because I would not have had Xavier Worthy on the radar if you hadn't talked him up in our pre-draft planning. So yeah, appreciate it.
Just hang on a little longer. I do think he's going to be a better late season play, similar to Jonathan Brooks. So let's see what's in store there. But I think he could really make a bigger impact towards the tail end of the season. Maybe Kansas City takes a loss here and there for once, and that could cause them to try to start ramping things up more with Worthy. But so far, no signs of that. But have faith.
We can both dream. I feel like we've got very top heavy teams, especially you in a 12-man. I know we talked about loving to trade? Any big trades you want to highlight in your league?
Yeah, certainly. I did. Yeah, one of the bigger trades I made this year was trading away Jalen Hurts and Amon-Ra St. Brown for AJ Brown and Jordan Mason. And this was before AJ Brown even played, returning from injury. So certainly, you can have some concerns there. You could have had some concerns there before making this move, and of course with Mason and the McCaffrey situation, all those unknowns coming into. I really like Jordan Mason. I've loved AJ Brown too. Like I just felt like I could count more on AJ Brown than I could on Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Jordan Mason, he's just been one of my favorite players this year. However, the last 2 weeks have been a little rough ever since I made this trade, so that might have had some effect. But still, I deferred a little from my love for receivers just to upgrade and have a little more running back security.
I feel like you're winning that trade. I mean, especially when you have Jaden Daniels, right? You're not playing in a super flex league, so you only need one quarterback, maybe a second as insurance. You're not going to play Jalen Hurts over Jaden Daniels unless you're like a Philly fan. You're not going to do that. So yeah, I definitely think you walked away with a win on that trade, even with Jordan Mason kind of having some down weeks recently.
I would say, sure, you could say I've won the trade, but also it does benefit the league member that I traded with, just because they were suffering in quarterback. I can't remember who they were playing before or what quarterback they were starting, but I will say their team looks a lot better with Jalen Hurts on there. So shouts out to Mr. Sassaman there, if you're listening.
It was probably Anthony Richardson. It was Anthony Richardson. Yeah. You need an upgrade from that. He's QB 29 for the year. So
yeah, absolutely. I did forget to mention that I think Justin Fields was also a part of this trade too. So I would have loved to just been able to either plug and play Jaden Daniels or Justin Fields. I'm a little higher on Fields than you were, but now there's just little value with Fields, and with Russell Wilson just, looking like the Russell Wilson of old of Seattle, not the Denver the Denver Russell Wilson that I remember. So
George Pickens is probably happy with the change of QB.
Without a doubt. Somebody that, maybe we should have targeted a little more and we kind of just overlooked because of the Steelers situation. Just the passing game wasn't all that friendly with Fields there, but it's different with Wilson, without a doubt. All righty. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the team that we're in the same league, about the team? Yeah, our work league, essentially.
Yeah, I can take it away from here. Yeah, it's a 12-team, half PPR as well. A lot of folks who know football, some people who might not follow it as closely. It's all in good fun. It's like a work setup. I think most people we're playing with are a little bit trade averse, but it's been a good season so far. So I'm 5-2 right now, riding a 5-win streak. Started off the season rough and really turned it around starting in week 3. I'm second in the league with that record. I'm second in points scored. I'm behind the first place guy by 7 points. So it's a tight race there. And again, I've gotten lucky. Had the third fewest points scored against me. But my team makeup as it stands right now is Anthony Richardson at quarterback, Derrick Henry again as a running back, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, picked him up in a trade, scary Terry McLaurin, Sam Laporta, which I have thoughts about, Darnell Mooney, Kenneth Walker III, and then I just stream a defense. I do want to highlight the kicker. Got Chris Boswell from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh hasn't been good at converting their drives into touchdowns. So he's actually kicker number 1 in fantasy. Just shout out to my kicker there. And then I've got Kirk Cousins, Justice Hill, Cole Kmet, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Sean Tucker, all riding the bench. And then picked up Jonathan Brooks and Isaiah Pacheco, both of whom are taking up the 2 IR slots we have. So hoping they get healthy, hoping they can integrate into their offenses, and I'll have 2 more running backs I can toss in there. I did have Rashid Shaheed as well in this league. Dropped him, of course, season-ending injury. And unfortunately, same thing with Brandon Ayuk. This week was not kind to receivers.
Yeah, no doubt. Hate to see Ayuk going down, especially since, that was a mutual trade that we had, or, you picked him off of a mutual trade from me. And, hey, don't forget who gave you Jonathan Brooks and Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, combined, they've scored 0 points for me. So don't act like you've done me a huge service.
Yeah. But, hey, you're banking on that potential. So, I sure hope it works out for you. And you also said Anthony Richardson's name with tremendous confidence. So I do have some questions about, where's this coming from?
I'm a gambler, man. I'm swinging for the fences every time. My strikeout rate is very, very high. Kirk Cousins has had some good games, right? He had that career or franchise record 509 passing yards game. What was it, 2 weeks ago? But we've talked about this. I've said a couple of times on this podcast that I keep discounting the running potential of quarterbacks, and Anthony Richardson has that. We saw that in week 1. He had a rushing touchdown and I think 50 or 60 yards on the ground. Scored 25 points total. That's what I'm not banking on, but hoping for. I've got a bunch of other star players like Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, number 1 running back and receiver right there. I've got guys who can put up numbers. Anthony Richardson is just trying to put the game away as opposed to a safer Kirk Cousins.
Fair enough. And there's a reason why you're in second place and you have a 5-win streak. But let's hear a little bit about your questions about Sam Laporta. How's that situation working for you so far?
Really, really rough. I was looking at our draft the other day, and I thought I drafted him higher than I did. I ended up picking him up in the 5th round, so it doesn't hurt quite as much. At a certain point, you're starting to throw darts, or you're not as confident in your picks. But I really thought Sam Laporta was going to be, top 3, probably top 1 tight end this season, following up on his rookie season, and he hasn't been. He's been tight end number 20. He's just not getting the volume. And 2 weeks ago, we saw him convert 1 target into a 50-yard touchdown catch. That was not the case last week. Jameson Williams is out at least 2 games, supposedly, for performance-enhancing drugs. So maybe Sam Laporta gets more targets, or maybe it just all goes to Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty get additional touches. Who knows? But yeah, that's kind of been a miss on my end.
Yeah, I could live with Sam Laporta blocking for David Montgomery a couple times in the red zone.
I'd rather not.
No doubt. I do agree with you. I do think the loss of Williams will help Laporta see some more targets in the receiving end. But yeah, we'll see. The Lions are a run first team, so maybe off that play action, Laporta can open up. Yeah, good stuff. Aside from that, your team is a bit of a terror, right? I'm not looking forward to facing it on week 11, but I hope by that point I've already almost secured a playoff position.
Yeah, speaking of, you've got your own win streak that you're riding right now. Do you want to get into your team?
Yeah, certainly. I started the league 0-3, so not very good. Even though I think the team was performing at a pretty good level. However, these last 4 weeks, luck has been on my side, and we have a 4-game win streak going, which I'm ecstatic about, right? Because you see 0-3, and you're already beginning to doubt the season's over. and then somehow Garrett Wilson comes out of nowhere and gives you 20 points to help secure a win or two here and there. But yeah, let's get into this team. So right now I have Sam Darnold at QB, Saquon Barkley at running back, Jordan Mason, Jalen Waddle, Garrett Wilson, Brock Bowers, Chase Brown, David Montgomery, Denver defense, number 1 defense in fantasy at the moment, Isaiah Guerendo, Jaleel McLaughlin, Khalil Shakir, Jerry Jeudy, Troy Franklin, and Jalen McMillan. So there's some overlaps with this team and my home league team, right? So I recently just made some waiver wire additions with Troy Franklin and let's see. Well, I guess it's just Troy Franklin, but other overlaps include Jordan Mason and Brock Bowers. However, I do think the player that's just shined the most on this team at the moment for me is David Montgomery. I think we made a pretty early week 2 trade between Montgomery and Ayuk, and so ever since then, Monty's just been probably the most consistent player on this team. And
yeah, it's like he's a walking touchdown machine week over week. And I mean, obviously now in hindsight with Ayuk done for the season, I'm regretting that trade. But at the time, I was happy with it, right? Debo was in and out of the lineup. Ayuk got his contract extension. I needed a receiver. I had a lot of running backs. You like Monty, you're high on him. So I was happy with the swap then. I don't regret it. But yeah, it's definitely benefited you more than it has me.
Yeah. And, for taking a receiver in the first round, Garrett Wilson hasn't really paid those first round dividends. And, the Jets situation is probably not the best situation to have players invested in at the moment. I do think the firing of Robert Saleh is going to affect this team just because, they have to insert somebody to in the middle of the season, right? And it doesn't quite look like that person might be comfortable with the head coaching position and manage. He was initially a defensive coordinator, right? So Jets defense pretty solid, but you're pretty much just letting Aaron Rodgers run that offense and play offensive coordinator. But it's just hard to really trust the aura and ego of that Aaron Rodgers has, even though he's capable. It's just not the friendliest of situations. Who would you rather trust? Who would you trust more to run an offense on their own, Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers?
That's easy. It's Peyton Manning. It's Peyton
Yeah.
Manning. And yeah. I think part of it, though, is we can recognize Aaron Rodgers, his career, his legacy, even as he plays, and also say that he's not great for fantasy football. It's a similar conversation with Patrick Mahomes. He's already one of the greatest quarterbacks to play on the field. He also isn't great at fantasy football, at least this year and last year. With Aaron Rodgers, he's older. I mean, we saw the Hail Mary to, who was it, Alan Lazard. But right. he still has arm strength, but he's not the same quarterback as he was in 2011, 2012. And you also have a lot of competitions in the receiver room. You've got the addition of Devontae Adams. You've got Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams is in the doghouse, but you also have Alan Lazard. You also have Tyler Conklin coming in here and there. Breece Hall, who is playing out of the slot sometimes as a running back. So yeah, that's a tough one if you're a Jets fantasy owner.
Yeah, it's been really tough to ship out Wilson, especially after those 20-point games. I was really looking at what options I could find or what options I liked for him, and it just didn't work to my advantage that the other owners also had pieces invested in the Jets, and just tough situation at the moment with the Jets. But I think this is just one where I'm just gonna have to write out Garrett Wilson as my best receiver. I have some faith in Jalen Waddle coming back, or, especially with Tua coming back. I have faith in Jalen Waddle, and I think, he can carry some of that load for my receiving core.
I mean, we talk about how much we love trades, but just touch on the Garrett Wilson piece again. I think part of it is because you invested your first round pick in him. It's tougher to part ways with him. Like, we had some big trades in our work league between us, between another player as well, but we were trading first rounders for first rounders. I packaged Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and someone else for Saquon, and then packaged Saquon in pieces to you for Jamar Chase and others. So it's like, if you're not getting, like that first round value, I know it's tough to kind of give up on him, but you also don't want to just dump off Garrett Wilson for, a couple depth flex pieces.
Right. Especially when the talent is next level, but
yeah,
fantasy football says otherwise. Sweet. So yeah, we touched a little bit on the Saquon, Jamar Chase. We touched on the Ayuk Monty. Another one. So what's the status there on Isaiah Pacheco? Is he going to come back this season?
Yeah, he is. I think when you traded him to me, he's got a broken tibia or fibula. He's got a broken bone in his leg, and he's on IR. I think he was going to be out anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, which you made the very astute observation. Anytime someone goes on IR, they're missing at least 4 games. That's a quarter of fantasy football. So that's an extended period of time. But I traded Jalen McMillan to you for him, and then you promptly dropped it. Jalen McMillan, and I just threw Pacheco on IR, so he didn't take up a bench spot. So not sure exactly when he's coming back. I'd guess maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, just in time for the playoffs. But until then, Kareem Hunt is probably going to dominate touches out of the backfield, even with Clyde Edwards coming back and Carson Steele trying to get involved.
Yeah, Kansas City, man, they just like to keep things simple, and whenever they're just there down by the 5-yard line, they're just going to keep running the ball. They just, something about them is just empowering, and they can just get these touchdowns for Tyreek Hill like they did this past weekend. I do suspect that if Isaiah Pacheco does come back, there's going to be a bit of a committee there, mainly because you have to wonder how much they want to use Isaiah Pacheco after having surgery and finally getting healthy, right?
I imagine if there is a committee, it won't last longer than a game. Like, we joke about how Pacheco runs downfield, like he runs like a cartoon character. He really wants to get those extra 2-3 yards every time he gets the ball, and I don't see him like allowing a competition. I feel like it's going to be 1 week, and then he's just going to say, like, give me the ball.
Yeah. I will say too, just to touch on your personal league real quick, I do think you probably have the biggest per player trade amongst us. So you want to walk us through that one real quick?
Yeah, I can hit on that really quickly. I got your advice on it since you're more of the wide receiver guru than myself. I ended up shipping out James Cook, DK Metcalf, and George Kittle for Devon Achane, AJ Brown, and Mike Evans. As you put it so aptly, take that and run. The deal worked out, I think, for both teams. He wanted a little bit more running back depth. He got George Kittle, who's tight end 1. He's been getting touchdowns, it feels like, every single week. DK Metcalf is dealing with some injuries, but he's still a top 15 receiver, top 10 maybe. We talked about Mike Evans really briefly. Again, a lot of injuries to receivers this week. Mike Evans re-aggravated his hamstring injury. He'll be out at least, I think, 3 weeks. And we can touch on Chris Godwin and some others later. Devon Achane, I'm not too high on. I picked him up as like a flex play. And then AJ Brown was kind of the crown jewel in this trade. I was high on him, am high on him. He's just got like such a high ceiling. It's, again, Jalen Hurts is throwing him the ball. He's competing with Devontae Smith. But AJ Brown, I feel like every time he sets foot, he's likely to go off for like 100+ yards and a touchdown or two. So really happy with that, and it's paying dividends for me.
Yeah, I would say maybe aside from someone like Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown is definitely in that conversation for best receiver in the league. Ja'Marr Chase too, but I just think Brown's probably a little more consistent for fantasy football. Even though Ja'Marr Chase can have those explosive 40-pointers like he already has this year. So never a bad thing. As far as A-Chain,
go ahead.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, Tua's coming back, so I do expect that A-Chain could probably become the guy he was last year before getting hurt and just be a complete fantasy cheat code. And that's my hope, right? And I'm not the fantasy guru, so I do think your doubts are certainly justifiable. But are you able to start A-Chain? Yeah, go for it.
My big thing when I'm looking at running back depth, which is where I'm strongest at in my personal league, I've got Derrick Henry and Saquon again as my two starters. And so at most, I could put two running backs in at flex plays. I've got J.K. Dobbins and a couple receivers. So it's like between J.K. Dobbins and A-Chain, I like Dobbins more, even after a really poor week 7. And then it's Mike Evans is injured now, but it's like, would I rather have Mike Evans in there as a flex play or Devon A-Chain? Probably Mike Evans. So it's not like I'm trying to discount him entirely or say he's a bust or a bad running back. It's just when you get into these like 10-team leagues or 8-team leagues, there's such so much talent available that some of these good players are less like automatic starts.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Unfortunate that Evans got hurt just about a week or so after you made this trade. Of course, your team member had DK Metcalf go down as well. It seems like his injury is somewhat less severe than Evans. So I'm certainly a little concerned about Evans, but if you can ride out the storm, then, Evans is going to be an awesome pick whenever he gets back. And like you said, probably an automatic starter.
Yeah, certainly not as bad as Chris Godwin or Brandon Ayuk this past week. Both of those guys out for the season after their injuries.
Yep. Real tough week for receivers. But again, when players go down, it gives other players a chance to rise up to the occasion. So what do you say we get into our bold picks for week number 7, week number 8?
This is my least favorite section. Like every time we do the bold predictions, I come back to this a week later and I'm like, why did I say that? I'm not going to say Anthony Richardson again. I'm not going to talk about him for the rest of this episode. I'm done.
Yeah, we did make some predictions last week, so let's cover those real quick. For myself, to start, I said Bo Nix would get 300 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 rush touchdown. He only put up 175 passing yard or 164 passing yards and 75 rush yards. So not bad. No touchdowns and no throwing touchdowns, no rushing touchdowns. As for my second pick, Tyreek Hill, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I saw his measly fantasy score across some teams this weekend, and I mean, it's just so far from reach. So
he didn't even have 2 catches. I think he had 1 catch on 2 targets and then a rushing attempt. It's rough for Tyreek Hill without Tua.
Yep.
I can't pretend like my predictions are any better. I'm 0 for 2 on the Anthony Richardson playing and scoring 4 touchdowns. I don't think he's scored double-digit fantasy points since week 1, but I'm still high on him. But I got to stop with this prediction. I've got a problem.
You have an Anthony Richardson problem.
I'll admit that. I also had Devontae Adams having exactly 4 catches, and 2 of those 4 catches going for touchdowns. He had 3 catches, and no touchdowns. So it may be a partial, but I feel like the touchdowns were the bigger part of that prediction.
Yeah.
But
I think we got the we also mentioned Amari Cooper would get a touchdown, so that did happen, but I plus that in with Devontae Adams, and that's a no-go. So just no luck on our prediction then, but we have some good ones for you right now. So take it away, Mark. What do you have listed?
I think this week we're kind of sticking to our lanes. We're keeping with the theme of running back and receiver gurus. We've got a couple all related to running backs. I think 4 of the top 5 non-quarterback scorers are going to be running backs. So if you think flex play, I think 4 of those top 5 are going to be running backs. We saw a bunch of high-end receivers go down or dealing with injuries, and there's such a high level of talent running backs in the league right now. I think Joe Mixon is projected to be like running back 7 this week, and Joe Mixon has averaged like 100+ scrimmage yards and a touchdown every game. It just speaks to how much talent is available. I also have Tank Bigsby repeating his performance, not to the exact yardage. I think he's only going to get like 80 or so rushing yards, but I do think he's going to get 2 rushing touchdowns again. They're playing against Green Bay. Etienne might come back, but Tank Bigsby has really been outperforming expectations for the most part, week over week. And then coming back to Joe Mixon, I think he's going to be the number 1 scoring running back this week. They're playing the Colts in week 1. Texans played the Colts, and it was a high-scoring affair. Joe Mixon is healthy. The Colts' run defense is not good. So I think Joe Mixon has like 90 rushing yards. I think he's going to supplement that with 40 or 50 receiving yards. I think he's going to get a couple good catches and 2 touchdowns for himself as well.
Yeah, Joe Mixon started the season incredibly hot, and I think your Joe Mixon prediction might be on point. He just looks like a completely different player on this Houston Texans team. So
admittedly, it's a little less bold than the Tank Bigsby pick. I'll say that much.
Yeah. Tank Bigsby, we'll see what he has to prove. I'll start with this.
You have?
Yeah, I'll start with this downer bold pick. I think it's going to be a rough week for Jaden Daniels if he plays, especially because he's playing the Chicago Bears defense. So it's going to be a tough test, but if there's anyone who can prove me wrong, it will be Jaden Daniels. And if he does, I won't have any more doubts for him this year. But yeah, as you alluded to earlier, I kind of want to stick we're sticking with our lanes here. So I have 4 receivers that I like going into this week. So one of them's Jalen McMillan. Obviously, with the injuries to Mike Evans and Godwin, someone has to step up. Baker has to throw to somebody. So McMillan's going to be that guy. He's going to have a touchdown and 70 yards. Troy Franklin against Carolina is going to find the end zone for another 50 yards. Jerry Jeudy with Jameis Winston at the helm now for the Browns. He's going to get his. So 1 touchdown, 60 yards receiving. And finally, Jalen Waddle is going to pop off in a sense with a touchdown and 80 yards receiving and Tua returning. We could probably throw Tyreek in there too, but I'll keep these 4 as my bold picks.
I feel like Jerry Jeudy is a bold pick because the Browns offense has looked terrible. And I mean, Jameis Winston is probably going to be an upgrade over Deshaun Watson at this point. But I wouldn't start anyone from the Browns outside of David Njoku. So yeah, that's a little spicy. I was looking at Jalen McMillan as well. He's had some rough weeks, at least in a half PPR. He scored 10 points, 2.5, 1. Missed 2 games, scored half a point, and then 4 points. So you saying he's going to get 70 yards receiving and a touchdown would definitely be a season high. But Baker Mayfield has to throw to someone, and that can't just be Rachaad White like it was last week. And Jalen McMillan, week 1, his only catch went for a touchdown, and he almost had a second that he dropped. So
Yep.
the talent is definitely there for the rookie. I like that pick.
Yep. Two rookies and 2 former Alabama receivers. So I'll take my chances. Well, I think this is all we have for you guys this week. Looking forward to the games this weekend in fantasy football. You think you're going to take 2 wins for the teams we discussed today, Mark?
It's projected like that, 55-60% chance to win. I'm feeling good about both teams. Yeah, you?
I should have 2 wins as well, and I'm confident that that can happen. So, yeah, that'll be it for us. And
Yeah,
good luck with your games.
Go back to our regular broadcast next week, where we'll just go over our winners, losers, and wild cards for the week for each position. But yeah, kind of an inside look into our teams and how they're shaping up halfway through the season.
No doubt. Best of luck, guys.